Hello, mountain bike friends, and welcome back to MTB Heat Check. On this episode, we are in the Centennial State, taking a closer look at the Epic Rides Grand Junction Off-Road that took place May 17th to 19th in Grand Junction, Colorado. This was the second stop in the Epic Rides Off-Road series and kicked off, as every event in the series does, with the downtown El Yucateco Fat Tire Crit. We're going to start with the women's race, where the favorites for the win have changed a bit since round one after the Whiskey Off-Road. The start of the World Cup XCO calendar meant that Kate Courtney, Aaron Huck, Chloe Woodruff, Catherine Pendrell, and several other top riders would be in Germany rather than Grand Junction. But that did not stop the intensity or lower the caliber of racing by any stretch of the imagination. Alexis Carter, Sofia Gomez-Vichafanye, Katarina Nash, and Rose Grant are just a few of the women vying for the podium in the 20-minute plus 3-lap race. With the pre-race voguing out of the way, we are ready for the start. The field went out fast on a track that was a few tenths of a mile shorter than last year to make the race more exciting and pack the fans in even tighter. After a few laps, the leading trio formed and they were working well together. Casey Armstrong, Vichafanye, and Nash all traded pulls around the six-corner crit. With a storm approaching, the wind was a factor throughout, and a detente among the leaders was necessary if they had hopes of staying in front of the chasing pack. And in the pack, Rose Grant and Hannah Fincham played the good teammates, controlling the front for Vichafanye and Nash in the break. With 5 laps to go, the leading trio was still comfortably out front, and the truce was starting to expire. With just over 1 lap to go, Nash took a long pull on the back of the course, which forced Armstrong to the front as the bell rang. Vichafanye slotted into the second spot, with Nash playing the tail gunner. When the leaders came around the final turn, the trio was down to a pair, and Vichafanye and Nash were side by side sprinting for the win, with Nash taking it by half a shadow. Vichafanye got second, with Armstrong hanging on to third. Let's hear from our winner, Katarina Nash, on how it all unfolded.
Which is great because we worked really well together. Everybody took turn on a certain part of the course, and we get just the pace rolling. We got a gap off of the beam, and it was just let's go. So it was a strong group, and we worked really well together. And then once we established big group, we still kept winning it because you never know, they could come back. So and last lap was just whoever had it, and I'm always intimidated by Sofia. She's an amazing sprinter and getting faster with every race. So I'm excited to take it here in Grand Junction. And thank you to the spectators. Really good crowd out there.
And here are your top 11 in the Fat Tire Crit for the women. Take a look at those results as we move to the men's race. The weather for this one is deteriorating quickly, with the wind picking up and the storm front quickly moving into town. Like we saw on the women's side, a few key players were missing from the starting line, most notably Keegan Swenson, who had been on a tear recently. But that didn't mean there were no hitters in the field looking for some hot sauce Fat Tire Crit gold. From on board Russell Finsterwald's bike, we can see the controlled chaos inside the bunch at the start of the race. In the early laps, several racers, including Stefan DeVos, Tristan Ewell, Payson McIlvaine, Brian Lewis, Finsterwald, and Jeff Kabush all worked to keep the pace high at the front. While we continue to watch the action, I want to give you a little behind-the-scenes look at what happened earlier in the day at the mandatory pro rider meeting that takes place before each Epic Rides event. During the Q&A, a wily veteran racer raised his hand and asked if the organization had a plan on how to deal with a situation in which one rider lapped the field. The resolution of that question really isn't important, but if you were paying attention, the bravado of possibly showing your hand to the entire field hours before the race certainly was a bold move. As we get back to our action, you can see the leading group is in a bit of disarray, with Kabush taking a long look at the other 4. Deciding he liked his chances on his own more than with these guys, Kabush attacked. And soon he was out on a solo adventure, head down, facing the windy conditions. On a side note, if you hadn't figured out already, it was Kabush who asked the question about lapping the field. And like Ruth in the 32 World Series, he called his shot. Now he just had to stay away. And stay away he did. Not necessarily lapping the entire field, but taking a big enough gap that victory was not in question for the Yeti Maxxis Shimano racer. McIlvaine took the field sprint for second, with Lewis in third.
Yeah, I kind of got that preem, and that separated a group, and we're working well together, and just telling the guys if we could kind of up the pressure for a couple laps, we'd probably make it stick. But a couple guys started to come across, and guys were missing turns, and I could just, sense a bit of fatigue. And you just got to go with your intuition. And made a little attack, and I knew if I could just keep my head down, the guys would start looking at each other, and I wasn't sure I was going to make it, but I was all in at that point, going for the finish.
As we take a look at our top 11, let's move on to Sunday's backcountry race. Unlike the Whiskey Off-Road, which featured fast racing and big climbs, Grand Junction is one for the bike handlers. A technical, rocky track with exciting single track and grueling climbs, the GJ Backcountry race is a killer. We're going to start with the men's race, which started 10 minutes ahead of the women's field. After a neutral rollout, the pack quickly blew apart with Russell Finsterwald and Fernando Riveros leading the way. Not far behind was Jeff Kabush and Stefan de Vos. But it didn't take Finsterwald long to establish himself as the strongest on the day as he began a solo effort off the front that nobody was able to close down. Kabush took over sole possession of second place and put in a great ride to keep himself ahead of the remaining front runners. The closest battles on course were for third, fourth, and fifth place. Riveros and de Vos were neck and neck until the final miles before a charging Ben Sontag had those two in his sights as they entered town. At the finish, Cliff Protein presented by Sierra Nevada's Russell Finsterwald takes the win by 2.5 minutes. Yeti Maxxis's Jeff Kabush grabs second place, another 2.5 minutes ahead of Giant Factory Off-Road's Stefan de Vos in third. Sontag works his way up to fourth, and CZ Racing's Fernando Riveros grabs the fifth step.
Pretty fun race for me. Fernando and I got a bit of a gap before the butter knife descent. Just kind of used that as an opportunity to get some fluids in, recover a little bit. At the bottom of it, we came together as a group, which I sort of expected would happen, so I was okay with that. But once we hit the windmill climb, kind of hit it pretty hard at the bottom to try to separate a little bit, and ended up finding myself by myself. So I rode the rest of the day kind of by myself. It was a bit hesitant to go for it at the beginning just because it was pretty strong headwind out there today, but luckily I was able to hold on to it to the end, grab my first Epic Rides win and first win in the Jersey, so all in all a good weekend.
Let's get into the women's race, where we pick up coverage early on and see that Katarina Nash is leaving nothing to chance. Around a minute behind Nash are two chasers, Sofia Gomez-Vichafanye and Alexis Carter. By the time we see Nash again, she is flying. No other riders in sight other than those she is catching in the men's field that left 10 minutes earlier. Behind Nash, Scarda was able to distance herself from Vichafanye, who now had last year's Epic Rides winner Evelyn Dong quickly closing in. At the finish, Nash was able to take her time, slap some hands, kiss some babies, and enjoy the dominating victory.
Just a lonely long ride for Katarina today.
Alexis Carter rolled in 5 minutes later with a solid ride for second. Vichafanye held on to third, with Dawn coming in fourth and Rose Grant picking up fifth.
Got away really early, and then it's just kind of like a stressful day because you just never know who's coming at you. So I just kept pinning it all the way until the end. But like I said, there's like start with a lot of trails, then there's a big climb in the middle, and then you finish on really fun trails. So I just focused on the sections that were coming up and kind of made it like, okay, that's a good trail. You can just, I know you're suffering, but it will be fun to ride the trail. So I just kind of motivated myself throughout the ride, even though I was kind of out there lonely. It was a spectacular day for the whole team, and good weekend for Cliff Pro Team at the Grand Junction.
And there you have it. Next up, we will be updating the Heat Check Power Rankings. Lots of moving parts in that calculation, so make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out. If you want to be a part of the conversation, use the hashtag MTB Heat Check on Twitter and Instagram. And if you have any questions, comments, or feedback, hit us up at feedback@cxhairs.com. And please do us a huge favor. Share MTB Heat Check with your mountain bike friends. Until next time, for CXHAIRS, MTB Heat Check, and the Wide Angle Podium, I'm Bill Scheiken. So long, MTB friends.